Hello, and welcome to Steve's Mixtapes. My guest mixer this week is a music journalist, novelist and comedy writer whose credits include Harry Hill's TV Burp, On the Hour, The Day Today, Mitchell and Webb, Smack the Pony, and he's even won an Emmy in 2015 for his writing for Armando Iannucci's political satire Veep. But for me, one of his greatest achievements, or well, one of my favourite bits of his body of work, is the 2001 Radio 2 series Lloyd Cole Knew My Father. In that series, you can hear some of David's inimitable, incisive music criticism.
Rock DJ by Robbie Williams there. Bloody awful.
And some subtly complex jokes, such as this.
That adds up to 102%.
Yeah, well, maths isn't my strong suit. This is my strong suit. Go on, hit me.
He is, of course, the one and only David Quantick. Welcome, David.
Hi, Steve. Lovely to be here. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, and it's a pleasure to meet you. And I just have a general question before we start about the music. Now, you've written 3 books in this Grumpy Old Men series, and I think it's fair to say you've always sort of cultivated a somewhat gently curmudgeonly image. Is that really you, or is that a public persona?
No, I'm a very cheerful person by and large.
Okay, I thought you might say something like that. Okay, so we'll move on to your first music choice. Now, guest mixers, as those of you who listen to Steve Mixtapes before will know, have to pick a track to hit the ground running, something to get the mix off to a flying start. And you've gone for an artist that we've had once already. My guest on episode 3, Gavin Morgan, went for a Jerry Lee Lewis track. He went for a live rendition of Long Tall Sally. You've gone for something a little bit more modern than that, or certainly it's from 1979, I think. So why this choice?
Well, it's interesting. I wasn't aware it was from 1979. I thought it was a little bit earlier. But like an awful lot of, it occurs to me that like an awful lot of things in my life, I would have first heard it on a John Peel show. In fact, I had a slightly weird phase when I was obsessed with digitized John Peel shows, and I would download them and play them in the car because there's a massive archive out there of old Peel shows. And I joined the Peel Wiki and all that kind of thing. And so this was about, 10 years ago, and I even wrote a novel plug called Go West, in which somebody goes on a journey to the West Country, to their homeland, and listens to nothing but old John Peel shows. It's kind of a commentary. But yeah, on one of those shows, even in 1979, Peel had this thing that he would play people he used to like, often to the bafflement of some of the young students listening who were either into the Sex Pistols or Pink Floyd. And Jerry Lee Lewis was still on the approved list. And this is just, I know nothing about this song. I think it's from his country period. And it's just a really great, bouncy, late period country rocker. And you asking me to do this reminded me of the days when I used to make what's disgustingly called mixtapes. Now, I hate that expression, which I would call compilation tapes. And this is exactly the kind of thing I would have put on as track 1, side 1 of a tape when I was younger.
Okay, well, it's your track 1 on this mix. A bit unfortunate that you hate the word mixtape since the podcast is called Steve's Mixtapes. But anyway, Here we are. Here's Jerry Lee Lewis with Rockin' My Life Away.
$14.25 and $14.98. I threw the rock and roll party on my last birthday, but it's good. I'm rocking my life away. I've been moving and I'm grooving and I'm getting broke night and day. I got a gal called Nellie, she's a chili pepper hot. She knows how to roll, a killer knows how to rock, and I'm rocking my life away. I've been rocking and I'm rolling and I'm moving both night and day. Well, the streamline, fleet line, a military brass, you know the gentle daughter, but the killer top brass. I'm rocking my life away. I've been moving and getting it both night and day. Watch me now. Come on, baby, you know what I mean. I like the way you shake that thing, 'cause I'm rocking rocking my life away. I've been getting it, and doing it all night and day. Get it, James? Rock a boy, you don't know what you love, 'cause I'm a mammy, jamming, mother, I'm getting it moving, hold on, I'm rocking my life away. I like to rock and roll, and I'm darn sure here to stay. Look out now. Rock and roll, rock, rock and roll, rock, whoa, rock and roll, rock and roll. Come on, come on, come on, come on. I gotta have one more time. Yeah.
Rocking My Life Away by Jerry Lee Lewis. I think from 1979, although your surprise has made me doubt myself, so I might have to go back and look that up. But I think that's...
I'd be interested to know. I'd be interested to know.
Now, one of my standard questions, you've sort of partially answered, but I'll ask it anyway. I always ask people if they've always been into making compilations, if they have a box of old C90s in the loft that they've made in the past. Is it something you've always done?
Yeah, I was the kind, I mean... I don't really know why. I suppose because I'd listen again to John Peel on the radio, and I really like the feel of a mixed bag of stuff. Also because most albums I quickly realised were, you know, some good tracks, a single, some rubbish, and something boring. And I like the control feeling. I think people who make compilation tapes, mixtapes, let's call them mixtapes, I don't care. People who make mixtapes, they like that feeling of control. You know, the worst kind is the pressing one on a girlfriend or boyfriend. You're like, no, listen to this. No, listen, wait, no, rewind. No, listen to that bit. You talked over the guitar solo, that kind of thing. But I really liked making compilation tapes. I had a friend who had a car, would make tapes for her to play in the car. I'm sure she thanked me. She actually gave them back later on. But yeah, just something about the mixtape, the compilation tape, that it's got a story. You know, it's got a starting point, like Rocking My Life Away. Then it goes on, then the mood changes. It's like making your own album.
Yeah.
It's like the opposite of air guitar.
There's a sort of accepted narrative, isn't there, that albums up to the sort of mid-60s were just, you know, they were inferior to singles. They were cobbled together, you know, in a few A-sides and B-sides and a throwaway cover versions. And then the Beatles came along and revitalized, you know, created the art of the album. And then from the 70s on, it was the... you know, it was the desired product to produce an album. But actually, you're right. Finding albums that are absolutely top notch all the way through is actually quite difficult. And I had John Moores from the Quietus on recently, and you know, he and I were discussing the fact that there isn't really a Beatles album that many people would say is sort of perfect all the way through. So yeah, no, I understand that. You've mentioned John Peel a couple of times already, and you've mentioned with Jerry Lee Lewis about, you know, older artists that were still on his accepted list. And interestingly, as we move on to your something old, I think this is very much a prime example of that. I looked up something that Peel said about this band, and he described them as good lads. They make exciting and unpretentious records. They make me feel positively carefree and have saved many a potentially disastrous gig for me. We are, of course, talking about the Mighty Quo. So are you a big Status Quo fan, David?
I am a big Status Quo fan. One of the great regrets of my life was I never saw, I believe they were called the Furious Four, the original hit lineup. Although I did see them supporting Queen later on. It was fine. There's something about Status Quo. if you set aside the Butland's years, it's all part of the package. The Butland's years, the Radio 1 ban years. There's something primal about the sound of proper Quo. Just that kind of throbbing one-note bass. It's in the Ramones, it's in New Order, it's in the Jesus and Mary chain. It's in old rock and roll, it's in Link Ray. And, apart from Caroline, there is no better illustration of just the power of a Status Quo single. It doesn't matter what they're singing. And people who say, oh, all the songs sound the same, miss the point. Of course all the songs sound the same. It's like AC/DC. If they didn't sound the same, it wouldn't be any good. Once you've discovered, it's like going, oh, sorry, this penicillin's the same as the other penicillin. Oh, really boring. Oh, I'm sorry, this champagne is the same as the other champagne. Once you've invented something brilliant, you don't go and mess with the formula. And when Status Quo did mess with the formula, it was less good. Down Down is honestly one of the greatest records ever made.
Down Down from Status Quo's 1975 album On the Level. And I think another thing I'd say about Status Quo, because I really loved Quo. I was bought for Christmas when I was, I don't know, about 12 or 13, the 12 Gold Bars
12 Gold Bars
compilation. And that contained the song where I thought they went a little bit downhill for me, which was Living on an Island, which I thought was quite weak. And thereafter, although there were some good stuff after that. But the other thing I wanted to say about Status Quo is whilst it is all framed around a very traditional 12-bar blues, there's often quite a lot more unusual and complex things going on in that. I mean, you look at the intro to Down Down, there's some really slightly odd chord changes in there as well. So it's not as simple as you think. A couple of things I'll put on a link to the webpage for this mix on stevesmixtapes.com is them doing the song at Glastonbury a few years ago. I don't know whether you saw that, David, but they took whatever that veteran slot is and they did a storming version of Down Down, which I'll put a link to. And the other thing I'll put a link to, of course, I'm sure you're familiar with it, is the Cuban Boys doing This Nation Needs You. The song with all the chopped up samples of John Peel saying various things. If you haven't heard it, I would advise you go and listen to it. It's a good nostalgic listen to hear John saying the things that was made him inimitably John.
I'll bear that in mind. I would also want to say that probably the least well-known Status Quo song is one of my favourites, which is a single called Rock and Roll, which was written for a musical that never happened, Status Quo's musical, and it's just a beautiful, sad song, a nostalgic song about getting played on Radio Caroline and wondering what the point of anything is. It's very much a kind of stayed up all night, taking lots of drugs and really regretting it kind of song. Rock and roll, it's fantastic.
Okay, well, I'm scribbling on my notes here to look that up, and when I found that, I'll stick a link to that up as well. I don't know that song. Okay, so we're moving on to your something new choice. Again, a question I've asked most people when we get to this. I read an article the other day that suggested if you include Spotify, SoundCloud, all the upload sites, there's something close to 100,000 songs uploaded every day. And even if that's an exaggeration, the sheer volume of new music is, obviously mind-boggling. To say how do you keep up with new releases is a banal question because nobody can possibly do so. But how do you ensure that you're still hearing new and exciting music?
I mean, that's a really good question. Basically, the answer to that is really simple. That I will either go the boring way, which is to read the Guardian singles of the year or the Quieter singles of the year or the Enemy singles of the year or whatever. Or sometimes I used to go trawling, which I'd go on iTunes and just buy stuff. But what I do generally is my wife gives me, or I buy the Now CDs, because it just seems to be, it's weird. It's like going back a bit, because that's what people did with Now albums in the 80s and sort of K-Tel and Ronco compilations in the 70s. You just go out and it's like, they're brilliant samplers. They're samplers of the charts. They're samplers of what's going on now. So you buy that, you know what people are listening to, you know what people like, and you avoid that kind of awful, I don't want to say Guardian reader, that awful effect of like, oh yeah, I'm really into Taylor Swift at the moment. Yeah, I really like the Eras tour. You just go, oh blimey, Chapel Roan, she's all right. I love the Now CDs because you also still get that thing of towards the end, they have a token rock section and it's always dismal. So that's my answer. I generally, although in this case, so there is an exception, which is in this case, the genre of this music was something that for quite a while I was really into. I was slightly obsessed with this genre and used to regularly buy it. And that interest has faded slightly, but every so often I go back in. And yeah, when we've done the reveal, we'll talk about it more.
Right. Okay. Well, I have to say, I wasn't familiar with this song. I'm sure I should be. I'm sure it's sold or been downloaded billions of times. But I also suspect some of my demographic will not be familiar with the song. So, do you want to introduce it?
Yeah, it's one of them great crossovers when it's two people who've got nothing in common get together. One of them is Bruno Mars, a very well-known pop star of recent years, and this is a collaboration with a member of Blackpink. Blackpink are the biggest K-pop girl band in the world. BTS are the biggest, and they're great. My wife pointed out that all their songs are basically bits of TikTok samples put together. They don't really have tunes as such. I went to see them live. Someone got me a ticket, and it was fantastic. They just make great pop tracks. Songs is not the word to use necessarily, but really great pop records. And this is a solo record by Rosé, or Rose, from Blackpink. Her angle is a little bit more westernized, I suppose. And this is, I never know how to pronounce it, whether it's APT, appartement or apartment. Let's call it APT by Rose and Bruno Mars.
Kissy face, sent to your phone, but I'm trying to kiss your lips for real. Red hearts, that's what I'm on, yeah. Come give me something I can feel. Don't you want me like I want you, baby? Don't you need me like I need you now? Sleep tomorrow, but tonight go crazy. All you gotta do is just meet me at the
It's whatever you like. Turn this opposite into a club. I'm talking drink, dance, smoke, freak, party all night. Gumbe, go, what's up? Don't you want me like I want you, baby? Don't you need me like I need you now? Sleep tomorrow, but tonight go crazy. All you gotta do is just meet me at the
Hey, so now you know the game. Are you ready? 'Cause I'm coming to get you. Hold on, I'm on my way. Yeah, I'm on my way. Hold on, I'm on my way. Yeah, I'm on my way.
Don't you want me like I want you, baby? Don't you need me like I need you now? Sleep tomorrow, but tonight go crazy. All you gotta do is just meet me at the
Just meet me at
just meet me at the just meet me at the
APT or apartment, or however it's actually said, by Rose and Bruno Mars, and that was David Quantick's Something New choice. It was released last year. Now we're getting a bit of poetry now. I have had one guest already choose something quite poetry oriented, and I'm trying to think off the top of my mind whether his mix will come out before yours, David. But whichever is the case, he chose a band whose name escapes me off the top of my head, but is Simon Armitage's band that he plays with. It's a mixture of him singing and him reciting poetry.
Lovely. Yeah, I like Simon Armitage. He's incredibly talented.
So it's LYT. Oh, I'm struggling to remember now. I'll have to drop that bit in later. But yeah, no, it was an interesting listen. I wasn't familiar with the band. I really enjoyed it. Are you a big poetry reader?
I'm not a big poetry reader. I really like Simon Armitage's stuff. He's written one of the best poems in the world, which is a poem about a panda that's also Ringo Starr.
Okay.
It's a very strange poem. A part of it is sort of going, I live in Peking Zoo, I live on bamboo, and the other part is going like, people never give me the respect as I earned as a drummer. And it switches between these two aspects, and it's kind of poignant because it's kind of about Ringo, but also about pandas, and I totally recommend it. And also, I am a massive, massive Philip Larkin fan. Bit of a spoiler there. I think I'm an honorary vice president of the Philip Larkin Society, along with Stuart Lee and Nick Cave, which is just ridiculous. But yeah, we'll talk about Philip Larkin later.
Possibly.
I do love poetry. I don't like a lot of modern poetry. It's mostly like you sit by the window smoking a cigarette, and I don't like certain rapping poets. I've never found I don't want to be snooty, but I've never found the appeal of soap operas set to vague streets type rap particularly very much. But no, I do like proper poetry. I may not know much about it, but I like it. And yeah, do you want to do a bit more introducing, or shall I go
Yeah,
into
so this is W.H. Auden. The poem is Night Mail, and I'll put a clip to it because it featured on a 1936 documentary with a score by Benjamin Britten about the Postal Service. And this is the poem chopped up a little bit and set to music by Aphex Twin.
This is the night mail crossing the border, bringing the check and the postal order. This is the night mail crossing the border, bringing the check and the postal order. This is the night mail crossing the border, bringing the check and the postal order. This is the night mail crossing the border, bringing the check and the postal order. This is the night mail crossing the border, bringing the check and the postal order. This is the night mail crossing the border, bringing the check and the postal order. This is the night mail crossing the border, bringing the check and the postal order. This is the night mail crossing the border, bringing the check and the postal order. This is the night mail crossing the border, bringing the check and the postal order. This is the night mail crossing the Pulling up beat took a steady climb. The gradient's against her, but she's on time.
Aphex Twin with Nightmail from the Orphans EP released in 2017. Yeah, it's an interesting take on W.H. Auden. You wonder what he would think about it if he was still alive.
He'd probably be furious. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I don't know a lot about the Aphex Twin, but I was Facebook posting about the Aphex Twin, and somebody sent a link to this in the classic. You might like this, and I was like, yeah, it's a bit of a novelty step for the Aphex Twin in this situation, but it is literally what it is. It is the Aphex Twin sampling Nightmail and putting it to some Aphex Twin music, and I've got no connection with the Aphex Twin, except that I'm from Plymouth, which is very close to Cornwall, and he's from Cornwall. And somebody recommended there's a book about the Aphex Twin, I think, called The Aphex Twin, and it is about the weird dance scene of Cornwall in the 90s, where basically pubs would hold mini raves, people would get off their nuts, and people would bring in tapes, and Richard Thingy, the Aphex Twin as he is known, would just DJ and start from there. And it's fascinating because it is that thing of music thriving in out-of-the-way places. Whereas, famously, you would do a gig in London, in the old days, you'd have all the music press there, you'd be on the front cover of the Melody Maker 2 days later and have a record deal. But someone like the Aphex Twin had time to hone his bizarre craft. And I think it's great. I've always loved the Nightmail. I remember at school they actually showed us the film, not actually in 1936, but I've always been aware of it. It's the narrator, whose name I forget, is fantastic, and the rhythm really suits it. It's brilliant.
Yeah. No, it's very, very enjoyable, and I hope those of you who are listening enjoyed it as well. Now, there's lots of bits of your work that I could ask about, but because we're on your Something Blue choice, that allows me to shoehorn a question in about Blue Jam.
Oh, yes.
Because a lot of people will not have heard of Blue Jam, but there's something else that I downloaded in probably before it was put on YouTube. All of the episodes of Blue Jam are on YouTube, and I'll put a link to that again on the stevesmixtapes.com webpage. But if you don't know, Blue Jam was a sort of surreal, almost ambient, dark comedy radio show fronted by Chris Morris. And the thing that strikes me, and I wonder what you feel about this, Dave, having been involved in it, was when you look back and listen to it now, it seems utterly, utterly incredible that this was on Radio 1 in the late 90s.
Yeah, it was fairly incredible then, but there was a window. I mean, just to get into Radio 1 politics, the old brigade were being kicked out. They were leaving to open garden fetes and go to jail. And the new controller, Matthew Bannister, was bringing in new people. A strange selection, people like Emma Freud, who was like a mainstream journalist, and new DJs, and so there was a lot more openness. And because Chris Morris had been doing stuff on GLR, it was not as weird a segue as you think possible, because some people knew his comedy. They knew that he made these bizarre fake interviews, he made bizarre sketches, and also he was a musician. He made his own soundtracks. So actually talking about this after the Aphex Twin works really well. For a while, I was actually convinced that Chris was the Aphex Twin under a secret identity. But Blue Jam, you're right. Peter Bainham, who worked on the show with Chris, did call it actually ambient comedy. And it's strange because it's the feeling of coming out of anaesthetic while being strapped to a table and not sure if you're listening to the news or a comedy show or a trip-hop album. It's impossible to convey the feeling of it. Reading the sketches in it, the comedy in it, in a book would not convey anything of the feeling, because it's a feeling of falling into a well. As as the sketches unfold and horrible things happen to the people in them, you're half going, what? But you're also slightly being hypnotized by the music. So there's never been anything like Blue Jam. Me and my writing partner then, Jane Bussman, didn't have a lot to do with it, but I am so overwhelmingly proud that we did work on it.
Yeah, and it's not the sort of way people listen to things these days, but I can imagine back in that time, at the time where you used to sort of scroll through the dial, I'm not sure scroll is the right word, but, dial through the frequencies, listening to things on the radio. If you stumbled across that without any context and not knowing what it was, it would be quite disturbing, I would think, because like you say, it leaves you feeling disorientated and woozy and not quite sure what it is you've just listened to.
No, that's exactly right. And yeah, because with stuff like the day to day, you would go in, you'd be in another room and you'd hear some bizarre headline about horses on the underground or the horizon is disappearing. And you think, did I just hear that? Because that was the news or that was Newsnight. Whereas with Jam, it recreates that feeling of listening to a broken transistor radio with the volume control not quite working, stuck between two stations.
Yeah.
That strange sort of lost. I mean, there's something about listening to music at night. You could listen to the Spice Girls at night and it would sound like it had come from another planet. And Jam just managed to do that effortlessly.
Yeah. So if you've never heard Blue Jam, then follow the link I'm going to put on the page and give it a listen. But prepare yourself. Your Something Blue choice, though, apart from the word blue, has very little to do with Chris Morris or ambient comedy or any such thing. It is the king himself, Elvis Presley. So his version of Blue Moon from his 1956 debut album. Why particularly this one?
Is the first one that came to mind. It's like a lot of people who were too young for the Elvis Presley years. When I was a kid in the 70s, things like Elvis Presley and Chuck Berry were just basically massive boredom warnings. You know, they just conjured up in mind pub bands in flares playing endless 10-minute versions of Chuck Berry songs and Elvis songs. So when you got the reissues of the Sun era stuff, the stuff he did when he was a kid, they were overwhelming. It's like, my God, this is Elvis Presley. This is that big fat bloke from Las Vegas who has to sit down halfway through his set. Because it just, you know, all the cliches are true. It sounded like sex. It sounded like somebody who was the first person in the world ever to enjoy themselves. So the rocking stuff is amazing. And this was just the flip side of it. And it sounds like it's, again, from the moon. Because the use of the techniques like echo, Elvis's voice, which has got this haunting banshee wail at the end.
It's quite sort of otherworldly, this version, isn't it?
It is. It sounds like Joe Meek or someone like that. You knew what he was doing as well. You knew it was weird, like a hillbilly. It sounds like, if you've ever spent a night in America near a railway line, it sounds like a train going past, which is one of the most astonishing sounds. You don't get that with, you know, overnight Southern Rail. But an American train going past in the night with the lonely whistle going. And Elvis is doing that. That and the apparent coconut noises, which I'm pretty sure they're not actually coconuts, but they're kind of... And when you hear other versions of Blue Moon, they're just so boring.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm quite fond of the one by Cowboy Junkies. I don't know whether you've heard that one. Blue Moon
Oh,
Revisited.
they were all right. Yeah.
So at least they do something with it.
They do. They did. I mean, they did with it what they did with every other single song ever written.
Yes.
But sorry, I interviewed them once and didn't get on. But no, their version of Blue Moon is fantastic. But it's kind of pointless next to Elvis's.
Blue moon, you saw me standing alone, without a dream in my heart, without love of my own. Blue moon, you knew just what I was there for. You heard me saying a prayer for someone I really could care for. Without love of my own. Blue moon, you saw me standing alone, without a dream in my heart, without love of my own. Without love of my own. Blue moon, Without love of my own.
We've reached the point of the mix where I asked the guest mixer to take things down a little bit. And for this, David's choice is REM. And I think this is from the absolute classic REM period. I discovered REM around about the time of Life's Rich Pageant. I went back and bought the 3 albums and the EP that preceded them. And I think, although they did make some great records after that, I think that period in the early 80s is one of the strongest of any band ever, really. Is it? Did you go for this particular song, or are you a big fan of REM of that period?
I am a big fan of REM of that period. Less so this album, which I think is Fables of the Reconstruction. I'm not quite sure.
Yes.
But briefly, I had a flatmate who was a music fan but preferred 60s music, and he was a barman in the Marquee Club in London, and he would come in and goes, we had this band playing, and they did Velvet's covers and they did like country covers, and they were incredible, and they're called REM. I'm like, oh, I've heard of them because I read the NME. And then I went with a friend to see them at the Lyceum, and it was astonishing. They did Moon River a cappella, they did Talk About the Passion, they did Shaking Through, they did Don't Go Back to Rockville. It was a fantastic, yeah, I, like you, I love early REM. The first, I've still got, I think that 12, no I haven't, but I had the 12-inch EP they brought out. I had all the early stuff. I sort of went off them around the time of Orange Crush and Pop Song, but then got back into them later. But yeah, again, like the Elvis thing, there's something mysterious about this. You could never hear Michael Stipe's lyrics. He was always mumbling, and when you did hear them, they were basically about astrolabes or compasses or spurs or something. And this song is the best song on this album, and it appears to be about an old man who's got a tree, and there's some mesh in the tree, and I think there's some insects, and it's just heartbreakingly sad, and you don't know why.
It's quite country as well, isn't it?
Oh, it is country. There's a lot of country in REM, as you might expect from a band from Georgia. And it's interesting. It's like, because they've got that post-punk thing, they did all these, I'm sure you know, these Christmas EPs, which had like songs by Spiz Energy. They covered Wire. So there is that element, but there is that country in it. There is that strange, one of the first albums has got a picture of a whole pile of Spanish moss, and it really sums up what REM were like, this sort of dense thicket of weirdness. And Wendell G is all that, but it's also beautiful.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's hear it now. This is REM with Wendell G.
That's when Wendell G takes a tug upon the string that held the line of trees behind the house he lived in. He was reared to give respect, but somewhere down the line he chose to whistle as the wind blows, whistle as the wind blows to me. Had a dream one night that the tree had lost its middle, so he built a trunk of chicken wire to try to hold it up. But the wire turned lizard skin, and when he climbed inside, there wasn't even time to say goodbye to Wendell G. So whistle as the wind blows, whistle as the wind blows to me. wasn't even time to say goodbye to windy G. So whistle as the wind blows, and listen as the wind blows to thee. If the wind were color, and if the air could speak, whistle as the wind blows, whistle as the wind.
Wendell G by REM from 1985's Fables of the Reconstruction. And it did, yes, it is quite countryish. You're right, they did do plenty of sort of post-punk covers, but they also did, if I remember, quite a nice cover of King of the Road.
Yeah, I
which
love
they did
that.
an admirably sort of sloppy end of a very long session sort of fashion, which I enjoyed enormously. Okay, so we're listening to the mix of my guest mixer, David Quantick, this week, and we're on to his Around the World choice. Would you say you listen to a lot of, for want of a better expression, world music? I mean, world music is a stupid expression, isn't it, really? Because all music comes from the world. But in terms of sort of non-UK, US music, is that a good proportion of your listening?
Not really, I have to say. During every so often, there was a band called the Bundu Boys in the 1980s who I absolutely loved. But by and large, you know, apart from things like reggae, and a bit of reggaeton, I had a thing for that for a while. I enjoy it when I hear it, but it's not something I seek out as a rule. And I think because it's always good music, but there's always that kind of the stench of authenticity. There's something supposed to be more real about, you know, non-rock, non-pop kind of things. Whereas I really like the mix. The reason I like things like K-pop and reggaeton is I like this absolute mixture of random influences from rap and from reggae and from pop. And I love it when all culture is mixed up because I'm a pop fan by and large. So I tend not to prize purity very much in music, whether it's country or jit music or whatever.
Okay. Now you've gone for, it's an interesting choice. Is this a somewhat tongue-in-cheek choice?
No, this is one of my all-time favourite singles. And
Well, I meant tongue-in-cheek in the fact that the song, the artist who released this song was sued by a South African group for plagiarizing it.
oh, was it? Well, that doesn't surprise me at all. It is the nature. I mean, historically, it's the nature of everybody from Led Zeppelin to be nicking stuff. It is literally cultural appropriation and financially wrong. However, musically, you've got, a South African rhythm, a Jewish rock band manager from London, and some girls from New York who skip. I mean, it's an extraordinary combination. And if there were rules about pop music, they would go, no, you can't do this. No, you're not having it. Sorry. And I also have a personal connection to this, was they had a press night. For those who don't know, the Malcolm McLaren album Double Dutch, produced by Trevor Horn, is an early example of crossover rap, but also features a great deal of African music, as well as Trevor Horn's massive synth sounds. And on it is this track called Double Dutch, which is the name of a skipping rhyme. And there was a group of girls who performed the Double Dutch, the skip called the Ebonettes. The skip they do is a Double Dutch. That's them dancing, is the line from it. And they came to London to do a bizarre promo event where at the Camden Palace in London, where they played the record again and again, and members of the press were invited, I'm not making this up, to skip. And as these slightly baffled young teenage girls from New York flicked the ropes around, people like me attempted to skip. So it's rather a memorable record, but
And how was your skipping, David?
It was dire. I don't think anyone was killed, let's put it that way. But no, this is an absolute, just from the moment you hear the skipping rope at the start. And McLaren's was a bizarre man, but he seems full of joy. And Trevor Horn's a great producer. And it's just the kind of thing where somebody goes, what is this record? And you go, oh, it's a New York skipping girls group set to the music of the South African townships with the Sex Pistols manager rapping over it and the bloke from Buggles producing. It's like, what combination of circumstances or events led to this? But it did, and it happened.
To be honest, I thought that song and I thought, oh, that was a silly novelty pop hit. But actually, I went back and I really enjoyed it.
It's really
it's
good.
very joyous, isn't it?
It's very joyous, and whoever wrote the original track was very talented, and it's Trevor Horn, so it's a proper pop record.
Well, according to the internet, the people who sued Malcolm McLaren were the Boyoyo Boys. I think
I've heard of them.
correctly, and they said it was a copy of their 1975 hit Puleng. So
Right.
I'll put links to all of that stuff on
I'd
the
like to hear
on the
Puleng.
website. Yeah, well, I'll definitely put a link up to that. So moving on to your left of centre choice, we've gone for the sort of ambient krautrock electronica end of things. The song called "The Bell Dog." So what's the thing? What's the story behind this choice, David?
Yeah, well, there seems to be a lot of weirdness I hadn't really noticed when I made this playlist, but so it's Cluster and Eno, and Cluster are a German group who are kind of hard to define. They're vaguely related to the krautrock axis. I think, some of them might have been friends with Kraftwerk, I don't know. But they make by and large, they make kind of moody, sometimes motoric records, very atmospheric. Sometimes they sound like imaginary film soundtracks. And they were mates with Brian Eno, who I have met twice and not enjoyed his company very much, but have always absolutely loved his music. And this is interesting because what Eno brings to it is he's got a great sense of very simple melody. And he also sings like, I think David Bowie once said, he sings like a girl, ha ha, which is a genuine quote from David Bowie on a sleeve note to the Buddha of Suburbia. But when he's doing it right, Eno is really good at atmospheres. And as a lyricist, he can be very annoying. He's one of those people who likes to rhyme clever things and sacrifice verbal wordplay, if there's any other kind, in fate against meaning. But The Bell Dog is just, again, yet another song in this playlist whose lyrics are, I think it's about a man in New York who sees a dog called the Bell Dog, and it's a strange dog. And that's all there is to it. I think it's like a scene from a Stephen King story. But the way the tune builds and the lyrics fit together, it's just beautifully atmospheric and conjures up a very strange world where the bell dog is a real thing. I absolutely love this.
Days. What are days for? Days are where we live. They come, they wake us, time and time over. They are to be happy in. Where can we live but days? Solving that question brings the priest and the doctor in their long coats running over the fields.
You've just heard the wildcard choice of my guest mixer, David Quantick, just then, and that was the inimitable voice of Philip Larkin reading his poem Days, which I believe was published in '64, but he wrote as far back as 1953. So you mentioned already that you are an admirer of Philip Larkin, and did you say you were a member of the Philip Larkin Society?
I'm an honorary vice president.
Honorary vice president, sorry.
Yes, indeed. Me, Nick Cave, and Stuart Lee. We should do an album together. It would be terrible.
Okay. So what is it about Philip Larkin that, it makes you admire his poetry so much?
I think it's the progression. I mean, there's loads. One thing is the progression from the trivial to the, what's the word? Elegiac to the transcendent, in that you've got another poem, one of my favourites of all time, called O Bard.
Oh, yes, I was going to mention that one. I would say that was my favourite one of his.
Which, yeah, well, quite right too. Which is an astonishing, I think it starts with, I wake up half drunk, and then it just goes through every aspect of the existential condition, the fear of death, the feeling that there is no afterlife, that religion can't help
Everything
you.
is completely meaningless.
Everything is completely meaningless. It makes you feel, again, like Blue Jam, that it's 4 a.m., except there's nothing out there. Like if you open the curtains, there will be no stars. And then it just turns it round, and it just says, telephones crouch, getting ready to ring, postmen like doctors go from house to house. And he doesn't quite turn it round, but he manages to say, okay, there's hope. And so many of his poems just go from the trivial, like church going hatless, I take off my cycle clips with awkward reverence. Just, they go from the trivial to the absolutely beautiful. And Days isn't quite one of those. Days is just, it's a tiny thing. What are days for? To live in. And, what's the meaning of life? And I forget the line. It's just like, but that question brings the doctor and the priest running over the fields. Which is an incredible image. Doctors and priests running across the fields.
We've had some discussion on previous episodes about Morrissey, and the fact that some people, rightly or wrongly, find it difficult with him to separate out his music from some of the views that many of his fans or ex-fans find unpalatable. Now, Philip Larkin, when his diaries and etc. letters were published, did express one or two unsavoury views himself. Do you find that clouds your admiration for him at all?
I've always been a big fan of separating the art from the artist because I can't be bothered to just sift everything, go through the, can't like that because he was a racist, can't like that because he was a misogynist, can't like that because he stabbed 16 people. That's all. It's just, I divide the two up separately. Larkin is probably someone whose company I would have enjoyed, except when he was basically, he ended up a bitter, lonely old alcoholic, and that's really when all the vileness erupted. Morrissey, obviously, we can't really comment on. He did once sue me. But I have no problem listening to the Smiths because it's mostly, again, that music is just an outpouring of joy. The brilliant combination, I was listening to How Soon Is Now the other day, which I hadn't heard for decades. And the combination of Johnny Marr's, like, ringing guitars, which just basically say, life is great. A song like Ask is just fantastic. And then to put to that, basically, Johnny Marr makes records. Some of them sound like African records, as we were talking about earlier. Jumping about guitars, beautiful rhythms from the rest of the band. But instead of having King Sunny Ade singing, you've got basically this miserable comic writer. And Morrissey was a brilliant lyricist, and for all we know, may still be, but he hasn't sung to a decent piece of music since about 1990, in my opinion. So I just separate the art from the artist. Otherwise, I wouldn't have any books. I wouldn't have any, the idea that you would have a record collection composed entirely of records by people who have lived a virtuous life would give you a dismal record collection.
Yes, indeed it would. Yes, it would be a bit grim. So if you like the sound of the Larkin poem and you don't know much about it, there is an excellent series on BBC Sounds by Simon Armitage. I don't know whether you heard this. They've called Larkin Revisited.
I think I'm in it.
Oh, are you? All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's several years since I listened to it. So, it takes a few of the poems and sets them in context and discusses them. It's really, really good. Simon Armitage is, as ever, an excellent sort of host of it. So, again, I'll put a link to that on there because that's really worth a look at. Now, just before we get to your finale track, there was one thing I wanted to ask you. So, I re-listened to some of Lloyd Cole Knew My Father, I mentioned the other day. I'm actually reading one of your books at the moment. I've just started How to Write Everything.
Oh, my.
Which is an interesting read. And it made me think about, you talk in your introduction about that, about all the different things, because you've written across a very wide range of genres and formats and all the rest of it. In Lloyd Cole Knew My Father, you say you wish you'd written this review where somebody said, "Oh, Sting, where is thy death?"
Yes.
Do you have a favourite line that you've written, either from a review or from a book?
That I've written? Well, it's got to be, I interviewed a band called Jamie Wednesday in the 80s who later turned into Carter, and I used it as a platform for a rant, and it was just about the idea that sampling had come in at that time and that records were being made of samples, and it seemed to me fairly soon that records would be made of samples and they would sample those records and those records would sample themselves. And the line that I wrote, which I'm still really proud of, was, "And in the end, pop will eat itself." Which was then taken on by an indie band. And I got a letter from this indie band going, "Oh, hi, Dave, here's all." I'm like, "Who are you?" And I'd forgotten that I'd written this line. That was the young pop. And, there's been an exhibition called Pop Will Eat Itself. And you can see the phrase. And I'm I'm really chuffed that I wrote that.
And I think they're still going, aren't they? I think they're one of those sort of 80s bands that are on the nostalgia circuit still.
Yeah, Clint from the band went to Hollywood and became a Hollywood composer. But the rest of the band, Graham and the others, are still going. And I saw Graham. Weirdly, I saw Graham from Pop Will Eat Itself the other day because he lives near me and he came to a writing event that I organised. So talk about Pop Will Eat Itself, readers?
Okay, right. So on to your finale. You've gone for something very rousing, which is the general idea. The Pet Shop Boys.
Probably my all-time favourite band who aren't the Beatles, David Bowie or the Buzzcocks. Yeah, I love the Pet Shop Boys. When I was a music journalist, they were considered not good. Again, authenticity, because they didn't play guitars. I literally had a colleague say to me, I can't believe you like the Pet Shop Boys, with the suggestion being that I was faking it to get attention, which seems an awful waste of time. But yeah, I fell in love with the Pet Shop Boys almost instantaneously. I'm still a huge fan. I absolutely love everything that they do. And which makes it slightly ironic that this track, which is my favourite by them, is a cover version, but there are reasons for that.
Okay. Well, let's hear it now. This is the Pet Shop Boys with Go West. Go West by the Pet Shop Boys, a cover version and also one frequently sung to the tune of 1-0 to the Arsenal as well, of course. And that was from the album Very, released in 1993. Okay, so we've come to the end of your choices, David. So it just remains for me to say a huge thank you for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure, everything that I hoped and thought it might be. Anything you've got in the pipeline coming up in terms of, books, articles, anything you want to have plug? I mean, I'm not the biggest audience for you to do a plug, but you may as well do one if you have one.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you very much, Steve. I've had a really brilliant time talking about stuff in a monotonous voice. I've got lots of bits coming up. I've got a radio series with French and Saunders called Whatever Happened to Baby Jane Austen. Series 3 coming up soon. I've got bits here and there. I suppose the main thing I should do is be totally populate itself and plug my own podcast. Well, I share it with a man called Ian Martin, who wrote all the swearing on the thick of it, and our female guests. It's called The Old Fools, and it's just two men of a certain age swearing uncontrollably.
Okay. Right. Okay. Well, there'll be a link to that. There's going to be a lot of links on this webpage. It's going to be a very long one. So, okay, The Old Fools. Haven't heard that yet, but I'll definitely give it a go. So, yeah, thank you, David. And next week we'll have another guest mixer on. But until then, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for that. That was really good. I really enjoyed that.
So did I. It was really nice. Thanks, Steve. It was a really nice opportunity to talk about stuff. It's a simple format, and they're the best, really.
Yeah.
When people know what they are, and also if you ask people who are music fans, people like me always want to bang on and talk, explain everything, mansplain their music, and it's a chance to make a mixtape live on air. It's fantastic, and it's nice to talk about stuff. And I think you're a good host, so it's all good.
Oh, thank you. It's very kind of you to say.